Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Mark Moyer, author of Win Again, speaker, career coach, and business advisor. And I help athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs reach their fullest potential. What you're going to be hearing in every single episode are conversations with athletes and other sports-related influencers. And we'll be offering you the insight that you need to succeed in life, including advice that will let you jump past your competition, whether it be for a great new job or taking your business to a much, much higher level. Make sure to connect with me on social media at Mark Moyer Coach and go to my website, markmoyer.com, to get access to the tips and strategies that my coaching clients get directly. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com and I'll get you going right away. Thanks for joining me today. It's going to be an awesome episode. Now, are you ready to make your mark? Let's do this. Hey everyone, welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. My name is Mark Moyer and I'm broadcasting to you live from New York City. And I'm thrilled to have you on board, whether you're here in New York City, somewhere else in the United States, Canada, Mexico, Europe, anywhere else on this planet. Thanks for being here. And I'm super excited because I just had an amazing chat with Corey Mays. And Corey was not only an impressive NFL football player, but he's really done what all players and athletes should be doing, and that's preparing for themselves after their careers while they're playing. And he went and got his MBA, and now he's a successful entrepreneur. He's an angel investor and does a whole lot more. You're going to hear all about it in this episode. But before we jump into that, make sure you go on to iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you're listening to this, Spotify, etc. Make sure you leave a review and go to my website, markmoyer.com, to listen in on other episodes, get other great content, hear more about my business coaching, my career coaching, and everything else. Would love to tell you more about it. Send me a note to mark@markmoyer.com. But before we go much further, let's jump right in now. Happy listening, Corey Mays. Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. My name is Mark Moyer, and I'm thrilled and honored to have Corey Mays on the show with me today. Awesome guy. He's actually pretty funny too, surprisingly. No, I'm kidding, not surprisingly. Corey, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
It's great to be here and make my mark with Mark.
Oh, I like that. I like that, Corey. So right off the bat, what I want to talk about, because this is again all about making your mark, and really, you had a career in the NFL. You've accomplished a lot of different things, but I like to sometimes go back to the very start and say, well, look, what was it when you were young, when you were a kid, and you said, you know what, I want to play sports? I mean, what was it? Did football pop out at you, or did you start out in different sports? What happened back when you were a kid?
Really, I was watching my older brother play, and he played, Pee-wee, and just going out there and watching them run around. And that's really just kind of what sparked me to play. I didn't end up playing to my freshman year of high school. I didn't even know there were pockets in the pants for the pads. I just thought they stayed in place because the pants were tight. So, I mean, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So that was pretty much my biggest motivation for getting into sports.
Well, that's great because, it's funny. Wait, what? That was the biggest? Oh, your brother was the motivation, not the pockets and the pants thing.
No.
Okay, great. I was like, that didn't make any sense for a second. Did you ever play any other sports, or was it always just football?
I played sports, around the neighborhood. Nothing else organized. I did run track in high school as well during the off season, but other than that, Well,
what kind of, when you say track, was it more like sprints and stuff, or long distance? What kind of?
Shot put, discus.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. They even threw me in the 800. So I was 240 pounds in a 4x800. And the rest of the kids are looking at me like when I line up.
Did you play the bad guy, the mean guy, and say, I'll squish you if you beat me?
No. I was just trying to get my mind right for those for that 800.
And what was the hardest thing when you're throwing a shot put? I always, I watched, you start here and then you do that sort of spin thingy and then you throw it. But is it mostly technique, or is it arm strength?
It's all technique. It's really all technique. And you kind of, I don't know, you have to learn and go through everything and practice so much to get explosive with it. So, you could be very strong, but if you don't have the right technique, it's kind of like golf. If you don't have the right technique, doesn't matter how strong you are, you won't be able to throw it right.
Oh, now you tell me. You could have saved me like 20 years of golf playing right there if you told me that at the start. Anyway, geez. And so you did these sports, but then you obviously focused much more on football. And, was there, as you were going through high school and eventually into college, I think you went to, you attended a very small college, right? I'm not familiar with it. What was it called again?
Yeah, in South Bend, Indiana, Notre Dame.
Oh, it wasn't the University of South Bend or something? Okay.
It might as well be.
And while you were, so how did you end up at Notre Dame? Was it, versus, were you being recruited? What transpired there?
I was blessed to, be All-American, have all those accolades, blah, 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 blah. And really, when it came down to it, and, not to other universities, but it was a lot of emphasis on the education and the alumni base. And, it was close to Chicago, where I'm from, hour and a half. And, they played on TV every week. So kind of the stars aligned, so to speak. I thought it kind of checked all the things on the list.
Oh, that's great. So you get to Notre Dame. Obviously, it's got a tremendous amount of history there, not just the football team and everything, but you've had there's so many legendary players that came from there. You show up, you play, you're wearing the amazing shiny helmet and so forth. But what was that experience like overall? I mean, did you have a great time there, a medium time there? What was it like?
I had a great time. We just had a bunch of different head coaches. So, it's never fun when you go to a university. Everybody wants to win a national championship.
Right.
Everybody wants to be great. But, we had a couple of years where we were winning. We had a couple of years where we were losing. And, we had a few different head coaches. But the good thing for me is I can handle any management change you throw my way. I can eat it up. Just no. So it's for me. You can feel free to edit that out. So
no way, man.
So for me, it was a great college experience. I wouldn't take anything away from it. It made me the man I am today.
Well, it most certainly does. And so you're going through college, and then at some point you made the decision, I'm assuming, that you said, well, I think you were still doing a lot of academic stuff as well. Was there a point that you said, you know what, I may or may not make the pros. What should I do to prepare for that if I don't? Or even if I do, how do I prepare? At what point were you in your time at Notre Dame that you said, you know what, I better get myself covered?
I think day one. I think if you're making the decision to go to Notre Dame, you're already thinking about, college period, but especially there. I mean, it's not an environment where the student athletes are coddled or, pushed along.
Right.
And, you don't have to go to class. No, you're there to graduate. You're there to be a representative of the university. So I think it's day one, you step on campus. That's what you're thinking about. You're thinking about the next step. And
so what was it that you started to do when you were thinking about the next step?
So I did an internship the summer before my freshman year. I figured out I didn't want to be an accountant. But it was actually a great experience because I was able to see from different departments, from counting inventory to spreadsheets and everything else. So for me, it was a valuable experience of figuring out what I didn't want to do. And then I went into I was a psychology and sociology major, and then I figured out I didn't want to be a psychologist. Once it was all said and done, I graduated early. I was able to start grad school, some classes, and I figured out, that wasn't for me. So ultimately, it was led back into business, years later. But we're just trying to figure out, I think you do as much as you can while you can, and that's the way to do it. Figure out what you don't like.
Well, and look, I'm sure it was challenging. It's super hard as an athlete to balance all your time. I mean, you've either got your athletics, your academics, your social life. I mean, it's kind of something has to take a hit, right?
Something definitely takes a hit, and I think that's the hard part. But the great thing is you learn balance. You learn there's sometimes you need to grind, and there's certain times you also have to learn how to let go a little bit and have some fun. But I mean, that's college for everybody, but I tell you what, any high pressure situation, you can take that into any career field, because people know you're disciplined with your time. They know you're organized, and they know you're going to be one of the first ones there, and one of the last ones to leave.
Corey, that's one of the things that I spend a lot of time coaching the retired athletes and the current athletes. And it's interesting that you bring that up because so many athletes really struggle figuring out, well, what is it that they bring to the table that maybe non-athletes don't have? Or, sometimes they look at professionals and they're dressed in a suit and, they say, oh, look at those executives and so forth. But at the end of the day, you're right. If you're bringing other types of athletic skills that you've developed that are not necessarily physical skills on the field, but more the mental skills and how to be prepared and a tremendous work ethic and being able to, as you said, grind through things, and you're highly coachable. There's so many things that athletes have that a lot of times they kind of take for granted, right? And they don't realize they have it. And then when they go into an office environment of some sort, they say, "Oh my God, that guy has no stamina. Look at him. He's crushed. He's crushed under pressure."
Right back up.
Yeah, absolutely.
You kind of think everybody's an expert in everything that in their career field, and rightfully so. I mean, you think of all the number of hours you put into your sport, and you should be an expert in it. And
right.
You tend to think that people put in the time and work into their career, and they don't. And that's the thing you just have to see by experience. That's the intimidating part of it. But most people know more than you do.
Well, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And it's something where I even say to people a lot of times, that person may not be an expert. They may know 10% more than you. And that maybe they're an expert compared to you, but you can still get to that point. I always also like to say, 85% of the jobs out there can be done by 85% of the people. I mean, it's not that hard to train into something. It really isn't. I mean, I probably should not be performing any sort of brain surgery for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
One, I pass out instantly. Two, forget it. I wouldn't even get to two because I'd be passed out. But I think that if I trained long enough and hard enough at becoming a brain surgeon, I may not kill the person. I mean, I may butcher it a little bit, but the point being that I think everybody is capable of doing almost everything if they apply themselves. And to me, an athlete learns how to apply themselves way better than a non-athlete. And I'm sure, well, obviously you know that. So, but it's really interesting to hear you understand that, because again, I think this is something that maybe you can start really passing on the word to others. And while you were still in the university, at what point did you realize, wait a second, I may have a chance to go pro, or did you even think that would happen? What was the point?
Really, I wasn't sure. I was mostly special teams. I was, my position coach and we didn't always see eye to eye. So I didn't really start the whole season to my last year. Last head coach was Charlie Weiss. So really it was, to me, I was fully prepared to use my degree. So, I mean, it was a blessing, that, I went through what I went through because I was battle tested. And the first thing Bill Belichick said, as a rookie, if you don't know how to play special teams, you're not going to make this team. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I got plenty of experience in that area. So for me, sometimes you look at something like it's a curse, but it's actually a gift, and I think we always have to see opportunities in everything that we have. We think we want this, we think we want that. But it also taught me that there was an extra gear that I wasn't pushing myself through, and I had to dig deeper. And I think a lot of times when I'm at a rut, I realize I'm not doing something I need to reevaluate,
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because you're absolutely right. We've all done things at some level, whether it's a job or a task that we've said, what is the point? Why are we doing this? And you're right. You don't know till much later. Oh, cool. I'm glad I did that. Right now. I don't want to spend too much time on the amazing football career and so forth, but what was it like playing for Mr. Belichick?
It's something in which you have full confidence every day going into anything that you're doing, and I think it's a testament to surround yourself with people who are experts and knowledgeable and are passionate about what they do. And I think that's the other side of it. You can be knowledgeable of something, but do you have the passion for it? Because that's going to drive you to work even harder. So for me, it was a great example to come into the league and learn from that locker room and from those coaches of how to be a professional and how to approach life every day. So to me, it was an amazing experience for me.
Oh, that's great. As a Giants fan, it pains me to hear you say that, but I'll get over it. It's been tough being a Giants fan.
You guys have worked out in your favor.
A couple times. Anyway, so now jumping forward, you're in the pros for a while, but then what was it back in, it was maybe 6-7 years ago that you retired, but how did you know that kind of the end was coming and did you know it, or did it kind of hit you quickly? What happened towards the end there?
Well, I think I was an undrafted free agent. So every day you have a mentality of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. At least that was my mentality. And I always thought of keeping myself on the edge because you have to be ready to go. The transition is hard regardless, but if you're not even thinking about it, you're really putting yourself in a bad position. But like I said, that locker room with New England telling me about the different all-season programs. I did executive education programs in off-season at Harvard, and, Wharton, and a few other places that they have. And I tried to take advantage of all the NFL's off-season programs. So I think that's, you just have to prepare yourself as if, you're going through the transition. Still wasn't easy at all, but still. It was. It made it a lot easier. I already had some sort of foundation.
But what was it what was the one day that you said, okay, you know what? I just can't do it anymore. What was it, something a physical thing, or did you just sort of say, you know what?
More mental. I think it was more mental. I left. I didn't sign back with Kansas City after the lockout. Okay. And I had a friend who's playing for Minnesota, and I went to a game, and I was sitting in the stands and I'm watching a game, and I just didn't get that feeling, that you're supposed to, and I think at that point, I think mentally it was just because it was a long off season, and, and I was just able to think about other things and put my mind somewhere else. And I think at that point, it was just kind of, well, maybe this is the end mentally,
Well, you know what? You were sitting back in that seat and you're like, you know what? This is a lot more comfortable than down there.
They're running full speed. Yeah,
exactly. Now, so since that time, you've started your own company. You've got your own LLC, and then you've also been involved with an energy company. And on top of that, I believe you went back and decided, you know what? Maybe I'll get some further education. What prompted you to do that?
Really, it's the higher level meetings, the higher they go, the language is different. And, you can't, it's cool to sometimes Google information under the desk, at a meeting or whatever. But after a while, you're like, I need to be sharp. I need to make sure that I am on point with whatever that needs to get done. And I think that's to me, learning is a lifelong lifetime thing. And I think we talked earlier about, what do people know? I wanted to make sure that people knew that I knew something. So for me, it's also, I'm an entrepreneur, but, I didn't want to pigeonhole myself. So, who knows? In a few years, I might want to jump into something corporate. I might be led that way. And I wanted to make sure that I had the credentials to do so. So.
And so you also spent some time with an energy firm in Chicago. Tell me what brought you into energy? I mean, that's obviously like a niche industry, right? But it's a fascinating one. But what got you interested in that in the first place?
Really, it was through a mutual friend. It really wasn't on my radar at all. Yeah. I heard the business model. I loved it. I thought it was something different and unique as far as being able to change the way a municipality works, the way facilities work, the way businesses work. I thought we're ushering ourselves into the future, IoT, and smart cities. So I think it was just the perfect timing for me. It was a perfect storm. And I was, I just retired and I was looking for something to build. And I think that's just, like I said, a perfect storm for me. That's how it happened.
So what do you think? I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit for your own opinion on something. What do you think is the future of as you said, smart cities? I mean, is this something that maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what do you think is going to happen when we talk about smart cities?
I think it's more, you talk about 5G, 6G. Everyone is pretty dependent on their phones, and we're pretty dependent on technology, and we're, the supply chain. It's about getting things faster. It's about knowing data. I think we're super data. Everything is data. We collect so much that, I don't even know if some of it is even useful sometimes. But this is the wave of the future. Autonomous cars, being able to have public Wi-Fi, things that talk to you. The sidewalk is talking to you. It's always about collecting data. So I think we're getting smarter and more efficient about how we live our lives. And I think that's what smart cities means to me.
All right, but we talked about autonomous cars, but honestly, I love driving. I'm not going to let some robot or whatever it is drive me around. Come on, Corey, don't you like to drive or not really?
You fly, don't you?
Oh yeah, I take the helicopter from my bedroom to my kitchen, all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's already here. I mean I obviously I have no invested interest as of today in autonomous cars, but
right.
It's something where people can think about that. If you have an hour commute every day and you can't take the train, I mean, think about all the things you can get done or relax or take a nap before work or after work or, multitask. People are already doing it anyway, but can it be done safer?
I suppose I'm old school though.
Control too. I'm on the same page with you.
I mean, it's I couldn't imagine being in a driverless car that we're just going the same speed as all the others and just in a big long line. It would just drive me crazy. If you spend any time in the LA area, I did spend a year out there after I graduated school, and I went bananas out there because everybody just kind of drives the same way, and then God forbid it rains, it's instant panic. I mean, it's pandemonium and it's freaking out. But anyway, all right. So shifting gears, you play in the NFL. You had I'm assuming some great experiences doing all that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later. And then you leave the sport. You're involved with these couple of companies and so forth. But now you're also actually, I'm not going to tell you what you do. Why don't you tell me what's on the what are you really in the mix with now, and what are you hoping to do going forward?
Well, now I'm full out entrepreneurship, so I also I invest as well, angel investing. So few of the companies I am hands on day to day, and I think that really changes your mindset when you hear a pitch. Yeah. The right questions to ask. Obviously, at first, you're trying to learn, and those can be expensive lessons. So the thing is take your time, do your due diligence, is what I always have to do. And I think it's something as well you have to make sure you're passionate about it and passionate about the entrepreneurs as well, because this is a marriage. When you invest in a company, it is a marriage, and you have to make sure that you can get along with the company. Will they, when times get rough, will they quit? Will they pack it up? Or will they fight with you and continue to battle? So I think that's the day-to-day. That's the stress. Sometimes on a Monday, you feel like a genius. Friday, you feel like an idiot. So it's just kind of an emotional roller coaster. You have to keep your balance about things and, realize that it's for the long haul. It's not the short term.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned a lot of, I work with a fair amount of former NFL players, and so many of them are entrepreneurs. They really enjoy the sort of the excitement and the thrill of being involved in running a company or overseeing a company and investing in a company. But sometimes the execution isn't always there. What kind of advice can you give someone? Let's say I'm leaving the game and I've been out, let's say a few months. I've kind of gotten the golf and some other stuff out of the way, and now I'm ready to really bear down, and I want to start a company. What do you think? Tell me a couple of things that I should be really paying attention to if I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Your expenses. That should be your expenses, and how are you acquiring customers? People think that it's going to be cheap. People think that it's going to be easy. People, I'm so-and-so, so people will just buy to me and will come and flock and do whatever I tell them to, and it is not the same thing. I think people really need to take control and understand their expenses, how much things are going to cost, and really write things down on paper, and then double check, and then triple check, and then quadruple check your expenses. I think that's something that people do not realize what they're getting into.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I speak from personal experience as well. So then expenses, but then also when you said, I mean, obviously a lot of it is crafting your message. You know, what are you trying to tell your potential customers? But how does someone that wakes up one day and says, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur. How do they decide what they're going to do? Like, what's the magic product or service that they offer? What do you know?
I think it's finding your passion. And I think, you know, and this is what works for me. And I hear some people say they chase money, they want money, and that's cool. And they'll do what they need to do. And they're, you know, whatever, say whatever. At the end of the day, I like to sleep at night. I like to know that I'm doing something the right way, so to speak. So I think it's about finding your passion and finding what drives you. You know, it may not necessarily be the industry, but for me, it's about building something. I love building something. I love being a part of that, knowing that, you know, we could say, man, we did this together. We worked hard. We built this. So I think it's just finding that, you know, whatever industry that may be.
That's a great answer. That's great. In terms of once they're an entrepreneur, once you're running your business and you're keeping an eye on expenses, you're starting to get involved with something you have a passion for. You're really excited. But what else do you think an entrepreneur should really focus on once they've kind of got their idea that they want to run with? They're trying to manage their expenses and figure out, well, what should I spend money? What shouldn't I spend money on? What's next?
Networking and mentorship. You need to get advice from people, and you need to talk to other people because they're having similar problems that you have, and you might feel like, oh, you're alone in this. They're like, no, this is normal, or this is, you know, because sometimes you freak out like, oh man, this is, you know, you need to make sure that you're talking to people because entrepreneurship, it can be very lonely. You can be on an island by yourself. It's not like you're going into a corporate office and there's employees everywhere else, you know, and you're talking about this, talking about that. Sometimes it can be very lonely depending on what type of company you start. So you have to understand that you are your own boss and you need to get as much advice as possible and network and continue to build yourself out and ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And I know sometimes we can be prideful, especially former athletes of,
right.
You know, I got to make sure I got this right. I got to make sure I got, you know, but you don't have to be that way. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be vulnerable as an entrepreneur.
Well, look, and it's great that you say that because at the end of the day, I find that especially if you do it in the right way, people are usually happy to help out, especially if they feel that they're sharing their expertise. You mentioned earlier mentorship, right? I think that if you find one or two or three people that are interested in your success, and not necessarily because they have a financial interest or a vested interest of some sort, but they just want to see you succeed because they like you, and you establish a professional connection with them to the point where you can ask them, well, look, you know, Nancy or Bob or Sue or whoever, you know, I see that you've created this great company, and, you know, I'd love to know from you, you know, what are things to, you know, what led to that success, but also what are some of the things that you ran into that were challenges that maybe I can kind of sort of slalom around or whatever it is, right? So mentorship is critical. You know, did you have, or do you have somebody right now that's acting as a mentor, or is it somebody you're looking for?
I have a number of people that I lean on at times because everyone brings something different to the table. And I think having some diversity of thought amongst your mentors as well. And then, you know, you don't want to just lean on one person.
Right.
I mean, you know, if you have options, but yeah, you don't want to just suck someone dry and, you know, deplete all their energy, you know, with your complaints or your questions all the time. So it's best to get as much, you know, different experience as possible.
That's right. Don't drain the mentor. That's excellent. We'll have to remember that one. But it's true because you know, it's interesting. I do some volunteer work on the side as well. And there was a time where I was helping out the wounded warriors, and what was interesting was that I was more than happy to help. I mean, look, I'm a big supporter of the military, big fan of people that sacrifice for our country and so forth, and especially the wounded warriors that come back, and they have such a challenge transitioning into civilian life. So I was helping a fair amount of them, but what ended up happening was that they were referring so many of these people to me, these guys to me, and women, and suddenly became almost like my job, my part-time job, where I was spending 10, 15 hours a week helping them, because I can't, you know, you just can't help one guy for 10 minutes and say, good luck with that. Here's 10 minutes of advice. I mean, it's a couple hours at a time. So I kind of had to take a step back from some of that because it just became so overwhelming. But tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now. I know that you recently started with the NFL Players Association or Alumni Association. Did I do that wrong? Yeah, right. In Chicago. And, I think tell me a little bit about what your function is with them, what your role is, and how you're trying to directly help some of the people that are maybe need some help.
So just took over the role as president this summer for the Chicago NFL Alumni chapter. And our motto is caring for each other, caring for our own, and caring for kids. So making sure that you're giving that mentorship, as we talk about, and keeping that brotherhood and fraternity to players. Because sometimes, a lot of times, once you're done playing, you kind of retreat into your own world. The locker room isn't there, and we're social beings, and we kind of retreat back into ourselves. So it's making sure you're keeping those lines of communication open, and also letting them know about different things that are going on, different jobs, careers, events that are going on, or different benefits that we have. We have a lot of benefits that a lot of players don't take advantage of because they simply don't know about it. They're not on the email list, or they didn't check the website. So things are constantly changing. So my point is to continue the fraternity here, and also to do some great in the community, and be great mentors and be great role models.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that because, our country is absolutely infatuated with the game of football and has been for a long, long time. And we love our football, right? Yeah. I know that there's been some issues more recently that have kind of adversely affected some of that. But at the end of the day, people love to see a touchdown pass or a great run up the middle or an interception or a run back for a touchdown, et cetera. Yeah. And it's invigorating. We all get fired up to watch this thing. But I also know that there's a little bit of a spotlight on obviously the health of the players, because the players now are twice as massive as they used to be, and they're all perfectly built and massive and strong, and they eat perfectly well. And look, back in the 60s and 70s, these dudes after whatever would be chowing down on all this garbage, and they were not necessarily massively strong. They were just kind of overweight, the bigger ones, right? And so now, athletes they're cut. They're in great shape. They can run super fast. But what, as you know, the sort of the problem with that is that the injuries have really spiked. And even with a lot of the efforts at trying to make the game safer, it's just tough. It's tough to tell someone, hey, don't hit that quarterback less hard. It's hard to do that, right? I think that it's interesting. Someone once said, we should go back to having the football players not wear helmets because then it would be a safer game again, which seems counterintuitive. But the sport of rugby, I don't know how much you've watched it, but it can be a pretty violent game. But because they're not wearing all that stuff, they don't try to kill each other. You tackle below the waist and so on. And it's interesting. I often wonder what would happen if the helmets were taken off. I don't know.
I think you're going to have to remove the rest of the equipment then.
Right.
Then it becomes rugby.
Then it becomes rugby, right? Touch football or whatever it is, right? Yeah, flag football or something. But one thing that's interesting is there's now, though, a lot bigger focus on concussion, CT, et cetera, the head trauma stuff. And, it's interesting because it's like, I think anyway, and correct me if I'm wrong, on one hand, the NFL is kind of saying, that it's the elephant in the room and they know it's there. And they kind of, on one hand, aren't sure if they want to really deal with it. But on the other hand, they sort of realize, well, we have to address it. It's there. It exists. Yeah. And they're spending a lot of money on research. And I think they're trying to get some of the former players to get more involved, whether it's having them tested now or seeking help a lot sooner. It's funny. One of the former players that I've spoken with, he's part of a company that's designed an app, which is really fascinating. The app actually is a set of games that you can play over just 3 or 4 minutes on a daily basis. Yeah. And it's got, when you said earlier about measuring data points and so on, you play these games or sort of memory games or dexterity, whatever it is, and just 3 or 4 minutes you play it. And after a couple of weeks, it's got a baseline of your how your mental health or brain health is. And basically it's got all these data points that you can take to the doctor and say, look, doc, I'm actually doing pretty good because I'm sort of plateauing here. Or, oh crap, I'm starting to do a little bit of this, or I'm a little bit of this in some area and a little bit of that in the other. And what I like about that is that it doesn't involve having a player go to a doctor and put on a big giant thing or an MRI or whatever, the CAT scans and all this kind of stuff that I think a lot of people, it's not just players, they're scared of, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to do it.
It's claustrophobic. I mean, it's just, they weren't made for us,
No. I would, yeah. So I think something like that is a great tool. And hopefully there's going to be more and more of these tools. And it's not just for football players and that sort of thing. It's for all the sports, but it's also, for soldiers coming back with PTSD. It's for the onset of dementia, which is great also. So, it's really interesting to see all these things that are coming up that really, I think, are helping make it easier for us to understand what's going on with our bodies without feeling like we should blow it off, like we don't want to know, or we don't want to deal with that sort of, as you said, the claustrophobia, right? So it's interesting. Now, as in your role with the Alumni Association, are they asking you to come up with any new ideas or new things that come in that can help out, or are you just sort of asked to sort of oversee the program that they have right now, or what's?
I think you're asked to, you're kind of given leeway to do what you need to do because you're going to understand your market a lot better than someone who's not there. So I think for me, I have some plans in place to do some local partnerships with our national corporate partnerships. So I think for me, it's doing something different. And taking the reins from Desmond, who's our past president, who's done an excellent job, and just taking the reins and continuing to elevate. I think that's the smart thing to do is get guys more involved in the community and continue to get them involved in business as well. I think it's a group effort. And for me, it's all about being creative. And I think that's something that we all can do here, especially in Chicago. It's a great sports market. There's a lot of opportunity here to really be great.
Well, one of the things that I'm going to do something I don't usually do, so forgive me, but I'm going to do a little mini plug for my book. And the only reason I'm doing that, when again, available on Amazon and your local, but what I'd like to talk about is how I think that athletes, once they realize, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but once an athlete gets that confidence back that, when you're on the field, or the rink or the pool or whatever sport you're doing, you're confident in your skills. I mean, even if you're the 10th out of 10, it doesn't matter. The point is you you're good, right? Yeah. And you're at the top of your game. Well, then you leave the sport and suddenly it's like, meow. And then when you try to go into a profession or run your own business, you're suddenly feeling like you're back at the bottom of Mount Everest and you're looking up and saying, wow, look at all those people, all those climbers way up there. Yeah. How am I going to get there, right? And so to me, what I like to show athletes especially is that, look, all you need to do is start understanding that you're already halfway up that mountain. You've already got all these skills and capabilities as an athlete that the non-athletes don't have, right? And so to me, once you show them that they're already halfway up the mountain, yes, then suddenly the frame of mind changes and they're very interested. And then you can maybe in your role present them much more successfully to companies that are willing to hire them once they can go into an interview and clearly articulate what it is they bring to the table. That's all it is. Once they know what they can show off, then they're in, right? Yeah.
Well, like you said, for training on the job, they'll pick it up. We're used to putting in game plans in a week, less than a week, and you got to go play. So, I mean, you have all the skills inherent. It's just building that confidence back up step by step. 1 foot at a time, we'll get up this mountain, but it takes patience,
It does. And which is, it's funny to hear that only because I think I've got a trophy somewhere. Actually, I don't. But I was going to say I'm the world's most impatient guy, which I know I'm incredibly impatient. But anyway, now look, this has all been awesome stuff. I've really enjoyed hearing about your growth and your transformation. I mean, you've gone from, obviously being a world-class athlete, a very athletic guy, and then you sort of saw through a lot of the stuff and said, you know what, I'm going to prepare myself for my post-career. You're now post-playing days anyway. And now you're involved as an entrepreneur, as an angel investor. You're keeping a keen eye on, actually, you know what? That brings me to a question I wanted to ask you earlier. As an investor,
yes,
you hear a lot of pitches here and there. You see a lot of people that, they may be great speakers, but their product really is shaky at best, right? Just list maybe 3 or 4 things that you look for, whether it's a product or a service, something that maybe they're asking for you to pitch in a little bit to help out. What's important to you?
I think first, who is the entrepreneur? Like we said before, are they doing this because they're passionate about it? They can't live without it. Are they doing this because it's a fancy little thing for them? This is a hobby. Mm-hmm. This is something they're going to do to pass their time right now. So basically the entrepreneur, understanding their temperament, understanding, do they have skin in the game? Have they invested in it? Or are they just looking for someone else to fuel their dreams? What else? The viability of the product or the service. Is it something that, can really make a mark or make a difference? Or is it just like everything else? To which sometimes that's kind of difficult. You just never know. You just never know with products or services what'll be different. I'm sure people looked at Snapchat and Instagram like, who cares? I'm going to look at pictures all day, So, I mean, those are the biggest things. What do they understand about the industry? But a lot of it really hinges on the entrepreneur themselves and how ready they are to get into the game. Are they, because it's tough. It gets hard, and are they going to be able to make sure things can continue in the way they need to as far as growth?
Well, right, and as you said, stamina. Man, stamina. It's there's every entrepreneur faces hurdles and ups and downs and everything, and it's just all about having a Teflon skin and really developing that thick skin to realize and understand that the keep your eye on the prize kind of thing, right? Just keep plugging away. And one thing I always like to try to say to entrepreneurs, as part of my business coaching, is I tell them, look, it's important you may have an amazing product. You may have like world's greatest whatever phone, the world's greatest whatever it is. But what's important is that you don't necessarily sell it. You allow your audience to buy it. And what I mean by that is that your audience, you need to create almost like the pain of, and remind them of the pain of what it's like to not have something like that, right?
Yes.
Like, remember when we used to hang out and when we wanted to call each other, we'd walk over to the wall and dial on a rotary phone, and then we'd have that long cord and we'd walk around the house with this giant long cord and so forth. If I could tell you that I invented a product that you don't need a cord, it's a cordless phone, would that be something that would interest you? That kind of thing, versus just saying, hey, I have a phone without a cord. And people would be like, what? Yeah, so, and they do now make these cordless phones. It's really cool. I don't know if you've seen them, Corey. They're awesome. Anyway, all right, I'm shifting gears now. We're going to do the Hit Your Mark segment. I always love this little piece. It's a quick little chunk, but it's something that I'd like to just throw a couple quick questions at you. The very first one is a super easy one, but tell me about what is your favorite moment on the football field? Favorite moment?
My favorite moment, I would say there's so many of them, but I think I have to capture what it is. My favorite moment was always walking out from the tunnel.
Cool.
Most games I'm gonna have tears in my eyes because it is a dream achieved, and not many people in their life are able to do that. And people don't realize the amount of hours and sacrifice it takes to get there. And I think it was always a beautiful moment to me because I would run out and my friends could see me play. My family could see me play. All the people that believed in me along the way could see me play and see me reach my dream. So I think that was always a special moment for me. I never took that for granted.
That's a great answer. Great answer. Well done, Corey. I like that very much. Next question is, who, I don't know if it's going to stand out or not, but who hit you the hardest?
Who hit me the hardest? There's so many people, and I won't know names because I won't allow someone to have that. I won't allow it.
That's funny. I had Gus Farad on a previous episode, and he did fess up, and he said, "Well, Mark, you'll be happy to hear that it was Michael Strahan that hit me the hardest." And all I could picture is Michael Strahan with his the gap in his teeth, smiling. Going, "That's right," But anyway, I like how you're protecting that information. That's pretty damn funny. Next is, tell me about, what is what is a legacy you want to pass on? And it doesn't mean that things are done now and so forth, but how do you want people to start remembering you by?
I think I want people to remember me by the impact that I've had on helping others. I think it's I'm fully realized that it's not about me. This is about helping others. You can amass as much money or material possessions and everything else and be just as miserable. But if you're not really giving back and being passionate about others, I think you've kind of wasted your life. That's just my personal opinion. So I think for me, if you're going to talk about me, talk about the good times of helping others. You don't ever need to talk about a house or a car or jewelry or anything else. Let's talk about how we made an impact together. That's the legacy I'm concerned about leaving.
That's a fantastic answer. That's great. And if I told you right now that you could close your eyes, open them up, and there'd be 3 other people surrounding you to have a drink with, alive or dead, who would your 3 favorite people? Who would you love to hang out with?
Oh man. Oh man, this is a hard one. This is a hard one. I think Oprah.
Okay.
I'd say Martin Luther King. And oh man, this is hard. Third one is hard. There's so many people. I'd say Rockefeller or any one of those like industry giants, because they started so many revolutions, right? So, they started from the ground up. So it'd be interesting to see them, their techniques and everything that they did, and just have a conversation of how you got things started,
That's pretty cool. That's interesting. Or like a JP Morgan back in whatever, that's really interesting. Great answer. Well, look, Corey, this has been awesome. You're a very insightful guy, obviously not just, athletic, but you've got, so much upside going forward. It's really impressive to hear what you're trying to do and you're doing as an entrepreneur. You're also tied in with, you've got some expertise in the energy field, which I think is really interesting. And quite frankly, that's something that I think you could probably be doing maybe a lot more in, right? Because leveraging what you're an expert in and the NFL background, and, if you're a very personal guy, and you could probably be out there speaking to, conferences and all kinds of things. So that'd be really great. But I really appreciate your time today, Corey. It's been awesome. Yeah, well, who came up with that idea? But listen, thanks for being on the Make Your Mark podcast. I'm pleased because you're clearly making your mark out there and you're making a very positive impact. And I like what you're doing with the NFL Alumni Association. And it seems like your head is on the right place and your heart is in the right place. And I like how you also want to really positively impact the kids in Chicago, it's so important right now. Get everywhere. It's so important that the kids have their heads on straight and all that sort of thing. So thanks again for being on the show, Corey. Much appreciated.
I appreciate you. I appreciate the platform. It's been great. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Have a great day. Thanks so much for joining us today on this episode of Make Your Mark podcast. The goal of the podcast is to help you find ways to make your mark, to succeed in life, and to jump past your competition. Be sure to leave me a review on iTunes and Stitcher, and subscribe to be the first to hear new episodes. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email, mark@markmoyer.com, and I'll get back to you right away. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.